Good morning. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Society of Bangor. My name is Reverend Drew Moeller, and it is a pleasure to be here with you all. I especially want to welcome those of you who are joining today on Zoom. Today is a very special day, a day that we celebrate and honor the late Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And to do that, we have a lot of special things that we're going to be doing in our service, some extra fun stuff with our children's story, and we also have 3 speakers from people in our congregation who are going to speak about their own experience of working through some of the awkwardness of the issue of racism and privilege and white supremacy culture and whatnot, but I'm going to save that for them to tell you about. So with that, I just want to let everyone know we're so glad that you're here, and if you're joining us today for the first time, we hope that you will join us for coffee and conversation in the Dorothy Memorial Hall after the service. So before we get started, I'm going to invite Phyllis here to offer some announcements.
Always your favorite part of the service, I'm sure. Phyllis Havens, I'm your worship associate this morning, a member of the worship team. So, of course, the raffle drawing is today. It's immediately after the service. So when the service ends, we've all done our benediction. You can hang around or sit back down because we are going to be doing that raffle drawing immediately here in the sanctuary as soon as the service ends. So don't leave to go get coffee if you don't want to, unless you don't want to hear your name being drawn. Okay. For the SEE folks or kiddos, there should be a bunch of activity sheets over there with colored pencils that are on the theme of MLK. Reverend Drew's holding one up. There's lots of fun word search and coloring to do. Also from SEE, the first time ever, we are going to be doing a K through first grade, so it's kindergarten to first grade, age OWL program. I will be very interested how that is. It's focusing, here's the flyer here. It's focusing on responsibility, inclusivity, identity, relationships, health, safety, justice, self-worth. It's starting February 3rd. There's going to be an orientation meeting for any parents of kindergarten and first graders. So Sunday, February 3rd, 10 to noon. I think that's a Sunday. So if you have little ones that might be interested in that program, please see, maybe Karen would know about who are the leaders for that. Well, yes, Karen will have more information about that. So if you picked up an order of worship, do know that we have a jam-packed day today that includes, after this service, if you are wanting to walk over, maybe walk over or at least carpool over to the Congregational Church on the corner of, I think it's High Street and Hammond, the MLK celebration service will be done there. Last year it was here. This year it's going to be over there. FLIA, the Faith Linking in Action program that's part of Food and Medicine, is going to be leading it. They have a fabulous keynote speaker, Harold Durrell Briscoe, and it's free and donations accepted. So it's going to be a very powerful service. And then, if you haven't already picked up your tickets for the MLK breakfast, it's the Wells Conference Center up on the Orono campus tomorrow morning at 8:30. I know, Suzanne, all the tickets to the tables are full. We had a couple of USB tables, but they're $20 each, and I'm sure they don't turn anybody away if you haven't gotten a ticket and you've decided you want to go to that breakfast. So I think that's everything. Yes. The 3rd is Saturday. Thank you. The 4th will be Sunday. Right. Lee? All right, so Lee, if you're planning on going to the 3 o'clock service over at the Congregational Church, Lee's looking for a ride. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. Okay. All right, you can see what Lee's, yes, okay. Thank you, Lee. All right. I think our announcements are over at the moment, and we can turn it over to the UUSB choir. I forgot one announcement, and that is that the second Sunday food donation collection, which has been outside with bins on the curbside, that's our last time of doing that today. Starting in February for second Sunday food collection, we will be doing it in the sanctuary here. So if you have food that you brought today, it will be outside. Thank you. Today we have David Patterson lighting our chalice. And Dave, after you've finished lighting the chalice, please light the candle on the altar for Martin Luther King. Right. We light this chalice in memory of the courage of those who have struggled for freedom, the persistence of those who've struggled for justice, and the love of those who've built beloved communities to carry on the light of hope. Blessed be.
I now invite you to rise in body or in spirit to sing our opening hymn, 149, Lift Every Voice and Sing. And this is a very special song. It is the African American national anthem, so sing it with that level of gusto that it deserves.
Ring
Now, if the young and young at heart would meet with Reverend Drew on our rug, you'll hear a story. Connie McVeigh is going to be helping out with that this morning.
Good morning. I see sparkly boots, all sorts of boots. People are ready for winter here. And that reminds me a little bit about this song that I'm going to teach you. This is a song that comes out of the civil rights movement. It's actually an older song, but the words were written. And it's a song that might be familiar to you. You may have heard it sung here, but I wanted to teach it to you today. And I'm going to teach it just the first verse really quickly, and then Connie is going to share with us a really amazing story, and then we'll come back and I'll tell you a little bit more about the history of this story. So let me see here. The words are very simple and very repetitive. They say, "We shall overcome, we shall overcome, we shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday." You're not going to be able to remember it all, so I am going to try and call it out as we sing along, okay? We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe. I do believe that we shall overcome someday. Beautiful. You learned it really quickly. Thank you, Connie. And Connie is now going to tell us a story.
Okay, I think you can hear me now. So this is a story of you know who. Who's this? Martin Luther King Jr., yes. And so actually the pictures are up there, so maybe what we'll do is we'll just look at the screen and I'll read the words. Okay. Yes. So, oh yes, that first. Yeah, the first. Oh no, that's the wrong. That's,
We're going to have to go. You're going to have to show the first one. Apparently, somehow it's not there.
okay. Because there is two books that we were deciding between. And, and do you have Martin's big words, Atticus? Or no?
No, I didn't.
Is that was the one I thought you said we should choose this
I
one.
didn't get the pictures for that. I got the pictures of the other one.
No, I sent both. Anyways, that's okay.
So you pick and decide whether
Okay,
you want to show
so
those pictures.
we're gonna we'll go with what's on the screen. That's a little, yeah. Good. Okay. So Martin Luther King Jr. was born on January 15th, 1929 in Atlanta, Georgia. His parents loved him very much. Martin Luther King had the same name as his father, except for one thing. His father was called Martin Luther King Sr. Martin was Martin Luther King Jr. Martin went to elementary school, high school, and college in Atlanta. He was a good student. Later, he went to divinity school in Pennsylvania. Martin became a pastor, just like his dad, and like Reverend Drew, at the Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta. They were both called Reverend, the Reverend Martin Luther King Sr. and the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. Martin's job as a minister was to help people in need. He visited sick people in the hospital and made them feel better. He asked people not to fight with each other. He said there are peaceful ways to solve problems. And like his father, Martin led people in prayer and song. The Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. is famous because he helped our country change some of its laws. A law is like a rule. Once there was a law in some places that said only white people could sit in the front of a bus and that black people had to sit in the back. Martin Luther King said this law needed to be changed. Rosa Parks and other people helped him change it. Now all the people can sit in an empty seat, any seat they like. Once there were laws in some places that said that African Americans could only use certain restaurants and drinking fountains. Martin Luther King and many other people helped change these laws. Now all people can share the same restaurants and drinking fountains. Once there was a law in some places that said that black children and white children couldn't go to school together. Martin Luther King and other people, including many very brave children, had this law changed too. Now black children and white children and children of all colors can go to school together. Martin Luther King had a special talent for leadership. When he spoke, people listened. Poor people, rich people, white people, black people, brown people, and people from all around the world listened when Martin Luther King spoke. Many helped him work, march, sing, and pray for justice. In the summer of 1963, Martin Luther King Jr. gave the most famous speech of his life. He gave it outdoors to 250,000 people who came to Washington, D.C. to ask the president for jobs and freedom for black people. In his speech, Martin Luther King said that he had a dream. His dream was that people everywhere would learn to live together without being mean to one another. Martin Luther King Jr. was shot and killed in 1968. Because he loved poor people so much, he was given a special funeral in Atlanta, Georgia, where he was born. His body was put in a simple farm cart and pulled slowly by 2 mules to a cemetery. Thousands and thousands of people walked behind Martin in a sad, loving parade. On his gravestone were carved these beautiful words: free at last, thank God Almighty, I'm free at last. Martin Luther King wanted people to be able to go places together, share food together, and love one another in peace, no matter what race they are, all races, all people. Because he worked so hard for freedom and helped so many people gain it, we honor him every year on this special day. We call this day Martin Luther King Jr. Day. We say to him, happy birthday, Martin Luther King. Maybe we can say all together, happy birthday! Woo! Wow. Yeah, so he was a pretty amazing man that many of you have learned about and know about. Some are just learning about. But I was wondering, what are some things that stand out for you? Anything that you see that he did that was pretty special? Yeah.
He kept fighting on no matter what, no matter if his house got bombed, no matter how many times people knocked him down.
He kept at it. Yes, he kept fighting. And he fought with his words, right? Not with his fists. And he kept at it. Persistent. Yeah. Any other thing that stands out about his specialness?
Well, come on. There's gotta
Yeah,
be
so much
younger or
bravery.
older kids here who have something that could.
Anything else anyone admires, adults or children? about Dr. Martin Luther King?
He has something to say.
Yeah, Dave, what do you admire about Dr. Martin Luther King?
I mean, along with fighting with words, he was a great speech maker. His speeches just,
Yeah,
he was able to do that, which is a gift, I think.
a real gift. Yeah, yeah,
when he
Thanks,
got,
Cam.
when he got knocked down, even though he stood back up, he just continued. When he got knocked down, he would use that knockdown and use it to help him fight it for the rights. Like when he
yes.
got knocked down, he would just use the person that knocked him down.
Yeah, when he got knocked down, he got back up. He didn't stay down. He kept
used the
at
words
it.
of people.
He
that knocked him
used the
down.
words of the people, and yes, and kept on going because he said he wanted things to be different. Yeah. So when you guys, if you see something wrong, someone being treated unfairly or a problem, what can you do? Yeah.
You can try and help them. Ask. You can go up and say to the person that's being bullied, "Are you okay? And do you need help?" And then you can ask the bully to please stop.
Yes, I'm going to repeat what you said. So you said you can go up to the person and you can give them help and support, and then you can also stand up to the bully and said, "Can you please stop?"
Yes, and if that doesn't work, try and get help, or even just ignore or leave, because all the bully wants is attention of the
Yes.
person.
So if it can't change, you can go get help. Maybe you can ask a teacher, a parent, a police officer, or some adult that you trust. Or you can ignore them, like you said. You can ignore them because the bullies or someone who's being mean, they like attention. So not giving them attention. So let's think about, just imagine, if you were to imagine, just take a deep breath. And just imagine, taking in your mind, your body, your soul, Dr. Martin Luther King's spirit, his wisdom, his energy, his bravery, his vision for a better world. If you were to take that in, what would you work towards? What would you speak up about and want to change with that bravery, that vision? Yeah.
Rights for all people like he did, but I'll try and be more than just say that. I will I will say words that are more. I'll try and be more than Martin Luther King.
Yeah, so you would speak up and you would fight for, what did you say, equal rights?
Equal rights, fight, jobs.
Jobs, yeah. And you would maybe even try to go even further than Dr. Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
Take his and yeah, anyone else, what might you fight for, or even adults? Yeah, Francis.
Well, I just wanted to say, kind of saying the same thing in different words, but just the fact that he was known, I think anyone familiar with Dr. King would say he was very uncompromising on his commitment to trying to change things through peaceful means and nonviolence. His commitment to nonviolence. There's a way to do things without violence. That he was absolutely committed to that.
Yeah, so his commitment to nonviolence, uncompromising, saying that no matter what, we're going to make changes, but in nonviolent ways. Yeah.
Fighting for LGBTQ plus people in the world that are, in a lot of states are being maligned in a lot of different ways.
Yes, so speaking up, taking this energy, this vision from Dr. King, and using it in these special ways, like fighting for LGBTQ plus rights. And so where there's going to be even more, but just imagine. So after we're going to learn a little bit more, or we're going to sing the rest of the song, or learn a little bit more, and then with this energy of Dr. King, we're going to, at the end of the service, we're going to do a little march and just practice, because it takes practice to speak up. Like Cam, you're really good at speaking up, using your voice, being able to speak up, and also marching and organizing, maybe even writing a letter to your school paper or to the newspaper. There are many ways, non-violent ways, to make changes. One last thing.
Yes. Well, we're fighting for nothing. We are all the same people, just different minds, different thoughts. So we don't need to fight. We all share the same planet, and we need to learn to take care of this planet and to take care of our rights and our people.
Yes, so you said we are all the same people. We all deserve and need the same rights, and yes, and we all share the same planet. We should not fight. We should work together. And that's really, it's like you have really taken in Martin Luther King's, and you have that. And we all have that. We all can do that. Thank you.
I think we should do that next time.
So Reverend Drew.
Yeah. It's so great to see how King's legacy. How's that? A little bit better? No? Am I on? Oh, there we. It's great to see how King's legacy has touched some of our young people, and I think touched all of us. We talked a little bit about how King, and it's important to remember that King didn't do all this work alone. He had lots of people who helped him, and there are also a lot of people who were not really happy with the changes that he was trying to bring about. And so when people went on marches, there would be people who would line the streets and yell nasty things at the people who were marching, and would throw things at people, and sometimes would even beat people up, and people got hurt and people got injured. And it was hard. It was really hard and kind of scary to do some of that work of being able to speak a truth that was unpopular, of speaking up against a bully, of speaking up against people who were trying to insult you and make you feel real small and scared. And so one of the things that they did when they were preparing for these marches is they would go through training to learn how to not react with violence when somebody acted as violence towards them. And one of the key things that they did to be able to help people find their spiritual center was to sing. And they sang this song. And one of the more powerful verses is the last verse, and it is, "We are not afraid. We are not afraid. We are not afraid today, because deep in my heart I do believe that we shall overcome all that hatred, all that racism, all that bias against people. We shall overcome someday." So let's sing that last verse together. We are not afraid. We are not afraid. We are not afraid. We are not afraid today. We are not afraid today. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we are not afraid today. We are not afraid today. Thank you. It's great hearing you sing. And hearing the wonderful stories that you had and perspectives that you had to share about King. Thank you. Dear friends, please join me in a spirit of meditation and prayer. Great universal Spirit, interconnected web of which we are a part, we gather in this time and place to hold up the many joys and sorrows that make up the fabric of our lives. Today we hold those in our hearts who we remember as special people who have touched our lives in meaningful ways, from great prophets like Martin Luther King Jr. to family loved ones and dear friends. We also hold those in our midst who are infirm, who are ill, who are sick, who are healing, who are waiting the results of medical tests or waiting for those tests. May they find themselves surrounded and supported by loved ones as they go through those uncertain times. We hold in our hearts with sadness the loss of lives at the border down south, and the scary way that authority is being exercised in ways that don't seem to be consistent with our constitutional way of life. And we also hold those in war-torn areas around the world who are suffering the violence of war, who are living the horrors of it. May peace come to those places soon, and may the relief and the supplies that they need to be able to survive arrive soon. We also hold with great joy the anniversaries, birthdays, and children being at home, and the wonderful way that through all of the difficulties of the last week with storms, that people continue to reach out to each other and help one another through these difficult times. Spirit, we gather in this time and place because we know that each life holds an important meaning. Each life holds a deep and abiding truth. By coming together in this time, in this space, we grow closer to each other, and we grow closer to becoming one. Blessed be. Amen.
This is the time in our service where we open up our hearts and our generosity to give back to this beloved community for all of its needs. We also are declaring this month in January to be the month for the undesignated cash that we may be put in the plates to go towards the Bangor Public Library.
It is with gratitude that we receive this morning's offering to support this beloved community and the Bangor Public Library. Thank you.
While Martin Luther King Jr. was in the Birmingham jail, he was a proficient letter writer. These are two quotes, readings passages taken from those letters. I must make two honest confessions to you, my Christian and Jewish brothers. First, I must confess that over the past few years, I have been gravely disappointed with the white moderate. I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's great stumbling block in his stride towards freedom is not the white citizen's counselor or the Ku Klux Klanner, but the white moderate, who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice, who says constantly, I agree with you in the goal you seek, but I cannot agree with your methods of direct action, who paternalistically believes he can set the timetable for another man's freedom, who lives by a mythical concept of time, and who constantly advises the Negro to wait for a more convenient season. Shallow understanding from people of goodwill is more frustrating than absolute misunderstanding from people of ill will. Lukewarm acceptance is much more bewildering than outright rejection. Also, a well-known passage. In a real sense, all life is interrelated. All men are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. And you can never be what you ought to be until I am what I ought to be. This is the interrelated structure of reality.
Thank you, choir. It's I think, one of our favorite songs. And brings that heartfelt sense of Spirit guiding us through some of the challenges of life. Today, as we honor the legacy of the late Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who was perhaps one of the most outstanding leaders our nation and maybe our world has ever seen. Many things made Reverend King unique that we heard about a little bit earlier: his intelligence, his charisma, his powerful preaching style, but perhaps his greatest gift was his unwavering commitment to bringing about social change, especially as it related to the oppression of people of color, immigrants, and indigenous people in our country and world. He saw systematic racism for what it was: an attempt of people of power to control others for the benefit of personal and collective gain. He saw and named economic, psychological, political, and social systems of systematic racism that exposed how those systems oppressed other people and kept them back from being who they were. The work that he did was hard work, and I believe that the only way that Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King was able to accomplish even half of what he accomplished in his short lifetime was significantly due to his deep religious and spiritual faith in the Hebrew and Christian prophets that challenged and continued to motivate him when he was tired and when he faced what must have seemed like overwhelming odds. But who else but a person of faith could endure the amount of suffering and public ridicule, the threats against himself and his family for speaking out against racism? Who else but a person of faith could be able to love the people who attacked him and tried to silence him? Who else but a person of deep spiritual discipline could face people with deep-seated hatred and respond to them with nonviolent action? King showed the power of loving one's enemies while not allowing their rhetoric or corrupt ideologies to stand, while still remaining hopeful in the power of transformation, that people could transform even those people who were being mean-spirited. That is more than political work. That is deep spiritual work. Many, not all, of our Unitarian Universalist ancestors have spoken out against racism, from the beginning of abolition movement to the March in Selma, where UU minister James Reeb and activist Leola Leozo were martyred for their commitment to anti-racism and voter rights. Many of the UUA's efforts have continued to grow in trying to find ways to be more diverse and more inclusive. Still, as people of faith, we continue to struggle in this work of dismantling racism and our organizational systems as we try to identify the deep and subtle conditioning of white supremacy culture into which we have all assimilated, whether we are woke or not. The work of dismantling racism continues to be an essential moral and spiritual issue of our time. Today, we are going to hear from 3 of our UUSB members who have been actively working to dismantle racism in their hearts, their minds, and their bodies through their work in helping our congregation adopt the eighth principle, and their ongoing spiritual work of exploring and identify ways that privilege and oppression continue to show up in our lives, and how working together in groups like SURE, or Showing Up for Racial Equality, our own local group, and groups like the NAACP have helped them intentionally take action to decolonize racial and other inequalities in our collective culture. So we have three speakers today: Lori Cartier, who will be our first, Joni Ellis, and Ann Hartman. So sit back and listen deeply to their wisdom.
Hi, I'm Lori Cartier. I'm one of the co-facilitators for the SURE group, Showing Up for Racial Equity. Reverend Drew asked us to think about and talk about our struggles and journey through discovery while we've been doing this work. And so I guess I had something all written up and I left it at home. So I'm just gonna kind of go for it. You know, I always considered myself this progressive person that embraced everyone and could not possibly be racist. I was reading the books, some books anyway. I was giving money to some of the right organizations, and I was participating when I could in some of the activities that might have been happening, rallies in town or something. And I felt pretty good about myself. I thought I was doing a good job. Then came the eighth principle. I do not think I'm alone in the resistance that I had to the eighth principle. I didn't like the wording. I didn't think it was necessary. I thought it was included in the other principles, and I love my 7 principles. So it took me about a year. It took me about a year to really do some hard inner work to realize that even though the wording might not be what I would have chosen, that the call to action was what was the important part of the eighth principle. And it took me a long time to embrace that. And as I began the work of really working on embracing the eighth principle, I started to realize white supremacy culture. My word, how could I possibly be part of the white supremacy culture? Those are those Nazis that have those swastikas on their arms, you know? But because I have grown up in this culture, in this country, I've begun to realize that some of the thoughts I have come straight from that culture. Some of the ideas that I think are okay, I'm realizing those aren't okay at all. And some of the ways that I am in the world just show my white privilege so strongly. And I am working every day to recognize those things when they happen and readjust them in my mind and soul so that I am presenting out to the world in a much better, much less racist way, because it's just embedded in each of us. So I appreciate the work that we've been doing in SURE. We're reading books, we're talking to each other, we're kind of every now and then we have this is a scenario, how should we react to it conversation. We're doing everything we can to help everybody who comes to the meetings, and we'll be probably doing things from the pulpit too. But we're doing everything we can to help people recognize what our inner white supremacy biases are and move away from thinking in those ways. Some of us are farther along, and many people are way farther along than I am, but I'm very grateful that we now have the eighth principle and that we now have this opportunity to do the inner work that's necessary. Thank you for listening.
In the mid-90s, I attended a national conference of the American Speech, Language, and Hearing Association in Boston. It was a 4-day event attended by 30 or 40,000 speech language pathologists and audiologists from all over the world. And it took place in 3 large hotels in Boston, right off the Common. As we traveled back and forth between keynote sessions, workshops, and breakout sessions, we often traversed a large arena where the poster sessions were displayed, along with message boards and things containing schedule changes and announcements. On one of the trips, I noticed a message that said that at 2 o'clock on Friday afternoon, there would be a special session for gay and lesbian professionals. I turned to my colleague and said, "What do they need a special session for? There's nothing about the practice of speech-language pathology or audiology that you would do any differently as a gay person than you would as a straight person." We didn't use this term cisgender back then. Well, my friend was as equally unenlightened as I was and couldn't answer the question. Several weeks later, when I brought up the issue with a lesbian friend, she was kind enough to help me understand. "It's not about how you practice," she said. "It's about how you're perceived." She went on to explain, in a school situation, parents might complain to administrators that they didn't want their children seen by someone who is gay. Or if you're in private practice, people might object to being seen by a gay person and boycott your practice. That would have a tremendous impact on your income. To say that I was dumbstruck is putting it mildly. I too had considered myself to be a liberal-minded person. You know the old trope, "Well, some of my best friends are gay." I had never considered the incredible privilege I had simply because I was heterosexual and a member of the dominant culture. I mentally return to that incident on a regular basis as I seek to understand my white privilege. There are so many times when I have been totally oblivious. When I can walk into a department store and not be followed by someone who automatically thinks I'm there to shoplift. Or if I'm stopped for speeding and I don't have to worry about being shot. Or when, for example, my husband and I, while visiting his parents in North Carolina, walked through a new housing development exploring some of the houses that were being built. Nobody challenged us. Of course, why would they? We were white. These are the issues that the SURE group is addressing as we work to understand our white privilege and how it impacts our culture and how our culture is impacted by it. Last spring, our congregation adopted the 8th principle, indicating our desire to become a multicultural, anti-racist, beloved community. We had some deep and difficult discussions about that. Those discussions need to continue because this is hard work. It's necessary work. We are essentially a white congregation in a predominantly white denomination. We white people are, currently at least, the dominant culture. And we need to do everything we can to understand the privilege derived from that whiteness and how it contributes to the racism that still exists in our society. Thank you.
I'm Anne. When I was thinking about what I might offer to you all today to honor Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., to say to you, the congregation, and the people that I really love, I had a hard time knowing where to start and what I could honestly and insightfully say about something so profound and deep in 5 minutes or so. I might be a little over. I was grateful that both Lori and Joni, also members of our group showing up for racial equity, would speak before me, such wise women of our congregation, and endless commitment and energy for the work of anti-racism. And then I remembered it's more important for me to speak up and speak to the uncomfortable truths about racism and white supremacy culture, including how it shows up here with us, than to be perfect about what I say. I needed to try, to interrupt, to challenge myself and others, and I knew I would be speaking from a white perspective, which means centering that for my brief minutes in order to connect with our predominantly white congregation and in hopes of helping us all move further forward in the work of anti-racism. But most importantly, this anti-racism work is about life and death. Violence against people of color happens in our country every single day. The trauma of racism is entrenched in everything around us, including our policing, education, judicial and incarceration, financial, healthcare, community, and our spiritual systems. I could go on. It's really in everything. I've held close to my heart the sentiments of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. about white people in our country, and that he essentially said that especially white liberals, white moderates, are the worst when it comes to anti-racism work. From Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s speech, "Where do we go from here?" in 1967, and Phyllis had some great quotes too. Quote, "Whites, it must frankly be said, are not putting in a similar mass effort to re-educate themselves out of their racial ignorance. It's an aspect of their sense of superiority that the white people of America believe they have so little to learn. These are the deepest causes for contemporary abrasions between the races. Loose and easy language about equality, resonant resolutions about brotherhood fall pleasantly on the ear, but for the Negro, there is a credibility gap he cannot overlook," unquote. We white people, and especially white progressives, we think we're there. We think we get it. I thought I was there. Like many across our country, I had a personal reckoning with myself when George Floyd was murdered by police on May 25th, 2020 in Minneapolis, Minnesota. This reckoning then, but after countless deaths, countless murders, centuries of harm. But I humbly and with guilt admit it wasn't until then that I did a deep personal dive. You see, I thought I was there. I thought I was anti-racist, similar to what other folks have said. But I hadn't truly centered anti-racism in all aspects of my life. I hadn't made the connection that it's on me and other white people to address and change our white supremacist thinking and behaviors of participating in and benefiting from racist systems, that there's a whole huge piece of white work that has to happen individually and collectively for true change to happen. And that I need to say to myself every day, what am I doing to disrupt white supremacy culture? Where am I talking about it? How am I bringing other white people in? And I now also know this is about the survival for all of us. Racism disproportionately and murderously affects people of color, but the systems meant to hurt people of color also destroy white lives. Racism is woven among classism, ableism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, and other repressions. Racism is a perpetual trauma that hurts our society. I now know that I have to stay connected to that tension to this day, that I continue to not center anti-racism enough. And that's by design. White supremacy culture doesn't want us seeing racism, talking about it, challenging and calling each other in and out, knowing the truth about our history, making systemic changes that truly bring about change for people of color and white people also harmed by them. We felt a lot of that when we worked on adopting the 8th principle. It was hard. So I'm wanting us all who are white to embrace that discomfort that comes with our growing understanding of our white privilege. It's messy, uncomfortable work. We have to have humility when facing it, and we have to shift from intent-oriented to impact-oriented in our thinking. And we need each other more than ever to do it. We have to stay connected in order to face it and change it. Connection and love are our pathways for healing the trauma of racism. And I would say action. I came to this congregation when my kids were little because of the action-oriented nature of our faith. The accountability part of the eighth principle speaks to this. We can't just learn and talk about racism. We must act to change racist systems. I'll leave you with a few immediate ideas about actions that we all can take now. So I was going to say a little bit about the breakfast tomorrow morning, but you all know about that. But that's a place to go and connect with other people that are really centering anti-racist, anti-oppressive action. You can also support the Wabanaki Alliance. You can visit their website, wabanakialliance.com, to get organizations in your orbit to sign on to be part of the Wabanaki Alliance Tribal Coalition and to follow and support important bills. There are lots of them that are coming up in the second session of the legislature. And also on that website, you can see all the ways that you can show up in support of Wabanaki sovereignty. We hope our church, UUSB, will sign on to the coalition as well. And another thing, finally, I ask you to rally in support of LD 1978. It's an act to enact the Reentry Success and Earn Time Act. This act is sponsored by Speaker Talbot Ross, and it'll support the increased release of folks who are incarcerated and should be eligible for supervised community confinement. In the United States, Black folks are more likely to be incarcerated across the board due to oppressive systems. In Maine, in fact, people who are Black are 9.3 times more likely to be incarcerated than white people. Maine is the ninth worst state in our country for disproportionate incarceration of BIPOC folks, especially people who are Black. The Speaker's office specifically said this bill is a priority for her, and the other NAACP branch in Maine, which is located at the Maine State Prison, has been working closely with her on this bill. So it's LD 1978. If you want to help with the issue of mass incarceration, this bill is something you can support right here in our state. There's a public hearing, in fact, this Wednesday at 10 in the morning, so please consider giving testimony in person or in writing for this bill. And I have a little more information if anybody wants to talk about it. So I'd really be happy to talk with anybody. I think we all are, and we really want to see people come join us at Showing Up for Racial Equity. It's something that does bring us together and gives us all ideas and keeps that energy going and that leaning into each other. So I'll leave you with the calling: connect, listen, learn, and act.
Thank you. I want to thank Lori, Joni, and Anne for coming and speaking from their hearts about the important work that they're doing, and invite again all of you to join in some of the ongoing work that the Shore Group is doing, and looking for other pathways, other ways. I think that this is a way that King would be very happy to see congregations coming together and supporting each other and nudging each other, pushing each other to do that important work within, but also to take that action out into the world and continue that work elsewhere. To end, I want to share a quote by Coretta Scott King, who reminds us that this struggle is a never-ending process. Freedom is never really won. You earn it and you win it in every generation. So we need to work it and win it in this generation and teach it to our kids. So with that, I'm going to wrap things up. But I am going to invite anybody who is interested, as we go to sing our closing hymn, We Shall Overcome. We thought it would be kind of interesting to embody singing that hymn with doing a little march around the sanctuary. So as we get ready, Connie is going to kind of help lead us in that. And the other thing I want to point out is the words for the closing hymn are going to appear on the screen, and they differ from what's in the hymnal on the last verse because we're put that important verse in, "We are not afraid." So I want you to know that so there's not confusion when we come up. So with that, let us sing our, and as we extinguish our Unitarian Universalist chalice flame, symbol of faith, hope, love, connection, and our commitment to working to dismantle racism and privilege in our communities, let us be reminded that although our service or our worship has come to an end, our service to each other and to the world has just begun. Blessed be. I now invite you to join in singing our benediction, and also just want to remind you that after we sing the benediction, please stay in the sanctuary so we can have our raffle drawing.